The Long Song is a three-part television adaptation of Andrea Levy's acclaimed novel, set in early 19th century Jamaica during the final years of slavery and the transition to freedom. The narrative centers on July, an indomitable young enslaved woman, and her interactions with two pivotal characters, Robert Goodwin and Caroline Mortimer. July. Portrayed by Tamara Lawrence, July is a resilient and spirited enslaved woman working on the Amity sugar plantation. Born into slavery and ultimately ripped from the arms of her mother as a little girl. Put a pin in this for later discussion. She now serves as a maid to Caroline Mortimer, navigating the complexities of her position with intelligence and subtle defiance. Robert Goodwin, played by Jack Loudon. Robert is an idealistic and seemingly progressive overseer who arrives at the plantation with intentions to implement fairer practices. His presence brings hope to the enslaved workers, and he becomes a figure of fascination for both July and Caroline. Caroline Mortimer, enacted by Hayley Atwell. Caroline is the owner of the Amity plantation. She is portrayed as deeply flawed, often displaying a sense of entitlement and superiority. Despite her position, she becomes unknowingly emotionally dependent on July, highlighting the complexities of their relationship. The setting and the master's demise. The series is set against the backdrop of the Amity sugar plantation in Jamaica during a tumultuous period marked by the Christmas Rebellion of 1831. This uprising, led by enslaved people protesting their treatment and living conditions, creates an atmosphere of fear and uncertainty among the white plantation owners. The existing master of the plantation becomes increasingly paranoid and unstable due to the rebellion's pressures, ultimately leading him to madness and death by his own hand. Put a pin in this for later. July's observations and aspirations. Observing the dynamics around her, July notices that Miss Clara, another enslaved woman, has managed to elevate her status by marrying a white man. Inspired by this, July begins to contemplate her own escape from the bonds of slavery. She sets her sights on Robert Goodwin, hoping that a union with him might offer a path to freedom and a better life. Discussions on heritage and marriage prospects. In their interactions, Robert and July engage in conversations about her heritage. July asks if Robert has ever been to Scotland for the sole purpose of pointing out that her father was a white man from Scotland. Technically, this would make July a mulatto and not a Negro. In her mind, this distinction could make marriage between the two of them more socially acceptable. Upon learning this, Robert inquires whether July's white father, the former overseer, was married to her mother. This is a question laden with implications about legitimacy and social standing. Aware of the delicate nature of the implications, July deftly changes the subject, understanding that delving into her parents' non-married status might deter Robert from considering marriage as a real possibility. Evolving affections and Caroline's awareness. As July and Robert's relationship develops, genuine affection begins to blossom between them. Caroline Mortimer becomes increasingly aware of Robert's interest in July. Despite recognizing this growing bond, Caroline conspires to secure Robert's hand in marriage for herself, driven by her own unmet sexual desires and the pressures of societal expectations. A meeting of hearts and minds. In a pivotal and tender scene, Robert and July meet to look at a book about Scotland, the homeland of July's white father. The shared connection to Scotland becomes a bridge between their vastly different worlds, offering a rare moment of intimacy and mutual vulnerability. As they pore over the book, their feelings for one another become increasingly evident, and their interactions grow more charged with unspoken desire. The encounter nearly culminates in a physical expression of their affection, but Robert pulls back, declaring that July is too beautiful and too good for him to leverage his position as overseer by taking advantage of her. His words reveal his deep respect for her as a person, transcending the societal dynamics of power and servitude. Later, it is revealed that Robert is also a virgin, determined to save himself for marriage. This revelation adds layers to his character and demonstrates the sincerity of his intentions toward July, distinguishing his affection from the exploitative relationships common in their world. Broken promise and cracks in morality. Caroline Mortimer gleefully announces to July that she will marry Robert Goodwin, fully aware of July's affection for him. Robert's choice to marry Caroline while keeping July as his adulterous mistress reveals the contradictions within his character. Despite repeatedly professing his love for July and even regarding her as the true wife of his heart, Robert's actions betray his words. His decision to comply with societal expectations by marrying Caroline, while relegating July to the role of an adulterous lover, exposes a crack in his moral integrity and foreshadows the pain that their relationship will soon bring. This duplicity demonstrates Robert's inability to reconcile his feelings with his societal and professional position, reflecting the cultural and racial hierarchies that influence his choices. He fails to openly honor July as his equal, despite his supposed love for her. Proverbs 6:32 declares, "He who commits adultery lacks sense. He who does it destroys himself." By entering an adulterous relationship, Robert and July invite consequences that ultimately unravel their lives, leading to incredible pain and emotional chaos for all involved. The wedding night betrayal. On his wedding night, instead of joining Caroline, Robert goes to July's bedroom and confesses his feelings once again. He tells her, "I think I've loved you ever since the moment I saw you. Every scrap of love I possess, every scrap I lay before you now. Will you have me?" July hesitates but ultimately kisses him, non-verbally communicating her yes. Instead of relinquishing his virginity to his wife Caroline, Robert consummates his adulterous relationship with July. Meanwhile, Caroline, left alone and humiliated, can hear the sounds emanating from July's bedroom and seethes with rage. This act not only solidifies the fracture in Robert's and July's morality, but also deepens the tensions between the three characters. Eventually, July and Robert welcome a daughter that they name Emily after Robert's late mother. For July, Emily represents hope and a tangible symbol of their love and her moving up as a lady. For Robert, the birth of Emily will soon introduce a new set of challenges as he grapples with the implications of fathering a mixed-race child in a racialized society. Let's take a moment to pause here and recognize some real-life lessons from this dramatization. Oftentimes, women can be persuaded to engage in forbidden sexual expression, either from the deception that comes from their own minds or deceptions uttered by the mouths of men. In this case, Robert's profession of undying love convinced our July to sleep with a just-married man, believing it was true love. Robert's downfall and mental decline. As the pressures of the failing plantation mount, compounded by the lack of cooperation from the formerly enslaved but now free workers, Robert begins to unravel. The idealistic overseer transforms into a man consumed by madness, just like the original plantation master we discussed in the very beginning of this video. In a fit of rage, Robert violently drives away the workers, raises a machete to July, and, shockingly, calls her a racial slur beginning with N. This moment marks a turning point, as his mental health deteriorates and his once deep love for July warps into resentment. Caroline, seizing the opportunity, uses Robert's instability to isolate him further from July. She forbids July from caring for him, denying her the chance to give him water or offer the stews and remedies she prepared to aid his recovery. However, as Robert regains strength, his disdain for July only grows. He stops calling her by her given name, July, and instead uses her slave name, Marguerite, signaling a complete emotional and psychological distancing from her, the ultimate betrayal. In the end, Robert and Caroline decide to leave Jamaica for England, abandoning July without as much as a goodbye, but not before committing the ultimate betrayal. They trick July and take Emily with them, leaving July heartbroken, alone, and destitute. July has been stripped of her baby girl, just as July was stripped from the arms of her mother as a baby girl. The cycle repeats. The love Robert once claimed to have for July is replaced by thorough contempt, reflecting a complete transformation of his character. For all that she thought she had with Robert, she ends up with no husband, no love, no child, and no home. Just the very kind of bait and switch Satan plays on many who lack wisdom and sense. Why did Robert turn on July? I don't know about you, but by the time I finished this series, I was dumbfounded and so sad as I could not understand why Robert had turned on July and why he had done her so dirty. The question we all want answered is, why did Robert turn on July? Here are a couple of reasons that might illuminate what motivated his actions against his once beloved. Robert's betrayal is a multifaceted tragedy rooted in personal weakness, societal pressure, and psychological decline. Though he once professed his love for July and treated her as his true partner, even if only in private, his actions reveal a man unable to reconcile his idealism with the brutal realities of his world. At the heart of Robert's transformation is his inability to challenge the deeply entrenched racial hierarchies of colonial Jamaica. Despite his initial intentions to be a fair overseer, Robert is a product of his time and environment. His relationship with July, a black woman, even one of mixed heritage, was never going to be openly accepted in a society that viewed her as inferior. Such a marriage would have forced white society to recognize the humanity of black slaves in a way that would have undermined the whole economy built on slave labor that was justified by the belief that blacks were less than human. His marriage to Caroline Mortimer, a white woman of status, was much more fitting and represented his submission to societal norms. By choosing Caroline as his public wife, Robert reveals his reliance on and security within the colonial system, even at the cost of betraying his own heart. This decision reflects the larger racial dynamics of the era, where interracial relationships were often reduced to illegitimate adultery like we see between July and Robert, or exploitative liaisons like what we saw between July's mother and father. By relegating July to the role of mistress, Robert participates in a system that demotes her despite his professions of love. His actions underscore his moral failure and foreshadow the eventual collapse of their relationship. The pressures of managing the plantation further erode Robert's mental fortitude and character. His idealism about creating a cooperative environment with the formerly enslaved workers quickly gives way to frustration as they resist his authority. The economic collapse of the plantation mirrors Robert's emotional decline as he becomes increasingly disillusioned and angry. His growing bitterness causes him to lash out at those closest to him, including July. This descent into madness is reminiscent of the original plantation master, who also succumbed to the immense pressure of maintaining an unsustainable system. In this way, Robert becomes a cautionary tale of how even those with seemingly good intentions can be corrupted by power and the weight of responsibility when they are unable to harmonize their inner struggles and external challenges. Caroline's manipulative influence. Caroline Mortimer plays a significant role in driving a wedge between Robert and July. While Robert initially tries to maintain his affection for July despite his marriage to Caroline, Caroline's jealousy and manipulation create a toxic environment. She seizes every opportunity to isolate Robert from July, forbidding July from caring for him during his illness and undermining their connection. Caroline's actions exacerbate Robert's internal conflict, pushing him further into the arms of conformity and away from his true feelings. Caroline's influence highlights the power dynamics at play in the relationships. As his rightful wife and a white woman, she wields positional and societal privilege that allows her to undermine July's position as mistress in Robert's life. Her actions not only reflect her own jealous insecurities, but also serve as a reminder to July that despite whatever Robert once felt for her, it is she, Caroline, that holds the position of wife.